Are Panther fans overreacting to Ejiro Evero returning for another season as defensive coordinator? One of our British listeners believes that a lot of you are. I'll answer his question among other weekly Friday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, and yes, of course, every single Friday. Just because the season's over does not mean the show stops. We are here every day. Your team every day is not just something that we say, it's something that we do. It's who we are here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for listening to the show and watching the show right here on YouTube. And of course, listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It's back. The weekly Friday mailbag every single Friday throughout the offseason until we get to June, because then we start doing other things on here, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. Now, if it's the day after the first round of the draft or during free agency and other more pressing events this offseason, there will be no mailbag, because I'm hoping I'm answering all your questions by doing that show. But every other Friday, I'll be here answering whatever questions y'all have. So either at me or DM me over on Twitter, or I suppose I'll call it X, because Twitter never had the problems that I was facing with X chat today when going through my DMs. So hit me up on X, gross, at Julian Council, or hit me up on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Ejiro Evero, he's coming back to Carolina for a fourth season as the Panthers defensive coordinator, and a lot of you are upset for the second offseason in a row, because last year the thought was, well, the Panthers just had the worst defense in the history of not just the organization, but scoring defense-wise, the history of the National Football League. So how could the man who oversaw and coordinated said defense, how could he return for another year? And Dave Canales stood by his man and brought back Ejiro for 2025. And the Panthers defense was obviously better, because it's hard to not be when you're historically the worst scoring defense in the history of this league. And they got to the playoffs, but it left a sour taste in your mouth, that final possession defensively, where they were back in prevent defense, no pressure on Matthew Stafford, getting picked apart over the middle, and then a phenomenal throw and catch by Colby Parkinson over Trevon Merrick to win that game for LA last Saturday. And then we found out on Sunday, the next morning or afternoon, because we were there for 4.5 hours, that Ejiro Evero would be coming back as a defensive coordinator in Carolina. Not just coming back, but that he had been extended secretly prior to the season, as we got more details on that on Tuesday when Dan Morgan, the Panthers general manager and president of football operations, spoke to the media. So a lot of y'all, again, are upset because of the secret extension, because the defense has not been great, and, well, that Ejiro is just all around still here. Now, Sam from England thinks that a lot of y'all are being a little obtuse, that you're freaking out a little bit too much. He says, hey, Julian, I think the hate for Ejiro Evero is so overdone and reflective of American sports. So he's coming after our sports democracy, y'all. Giving up 34 to the Rams is not unforgivable with the resources he had at his disposal. This D has been so much better this year with better players than last season. I think the fans need to remember there's a reason Tepper gave him all of that money. Do you not think that with another draft and free agency, he'd have a really good defense next season? I certainly think that it's possible, Sam from England. And it is always, and I included this because it's good to get other perspectives, because while there are Panther fans all over the world, I've met plenty of y'all that are from here in the Carolinas. I've met some that are from England. I've not met Sam, but I've met our guy Liam. I've met Matthew. I've met a couple from England. I've met guys in Germany, like Moritz and Kai, many friends that we made last year. I guess it's now been 2 years. That's not been 2 years, but it's been like 15 months, whatever it was, 14 months since our time in Munich. I've gotten to meet Panther fans from all over the world, which is truly a blessing and an honor and all of that. So we all may sit here and view the team and love the team, but there's going to be different viewpoints and perspectives based off of where you're from, because where you grew up, your environment, that shapes who you are. We all, I think, would understand that at this point in time, but also the way that we view sports is different in each country. And in England, I guess what Sam is saying, at least, from his perspective, we're overreacting here in the States when it comes to Ejiro Evero. A lot of y'all are overreacting to him coming back. Now, I do follow English football, English Premier League, even a little bit of championship I'll dabble into. I'm a big Liverpool guy. If you are like, oh, of course you're a Liverpool guy, you'll never walk alone. Get out of here. I don't want to hear any criticism as far as that goes. But I have seen in my time, I've been supporting Liverpool since after the World Cup in Germany in 2006. So I've been watching this for now 20 years coming up this summer. I have seen plenty of times throughout the Premier League and the championship and in English football, managers not get a lot of time. I believe like Wolves had 5 different managers in a single season like 5 years ago. So that's not necessarily the most patient bunch over in England. So it is saying a lot that Sam is coming out here and saying that y'all are overreacting. Now, looking at the defensive improvements from 2024 to 2025, talk about these earlier in the week. They went from 32nd in total defense to 16th, 32nd, which again is last in yards per play, to 20th, from last in points per game to 15th, from last in EPA per play to 22nd, to last in success rate to 16th. So they went from obviously the worst defense in the league to like right there smack dab in the middle, which I do think is a positive improvement when you get back Derek Brown, when you're able to sign Bobby Brown III, Turk Wharton, you're bringing Sharon Merrick, you're bringing Christian Roseboom. They did the necessary things to get this defense to be back to just a middle of the road defense. So I do think that's a job well done. Now, to you, the fan, not talking about Sam and those who are fine with Ejiro coming back, but you who's not happy with Ejiro coming back, are those numbers enough for you to feel like there was a big enough improvement made this past season for him to be back? Well, I guess it doesn't really matter because they've already done it. But after hearing that, does that make you feel better? Yes or no? So please let me know in my DMs. Now, here's the thing. Since Ejiro arrived, this is the 23rd total defense in the NFL. That's looking at yardage. They're the 24th in yards per play, allowing 5.5 yards per play. They're 30th in the most points per drive allowed and 30th in opponents' touchdowns since he's been here. They're 30th in EPA per play. They're 30th in success rate. So that is a bottom 10 defense throughout his first 3 years in Carolina. But it also just lacks the context of who was here and who was not here. Like Burns was here for a period of time. Luvu was here, but Luvu didn't want to play in defense. He wanted to go be the Micah Parsons light up in Washington with Dan Quinn, the head coach, scheming things up. That's what he wanted to do. And it worked out for him certainly in 24. I didn't watch a lot of the Commanders this past season because they were bad. So I don't really know how it worked out for him in 2025, to be completely honest with y'all. So there's that. They brought in Clowney. He was fine, but then they moved on from Clowney this past year. They had 2 rookies, Nick Scorton and Prince Uman Mielen. They brought in Pat Jones. He only played 3 games. DJ Woodham was around as well, but he missed 9 games his first year. So there's plenty of things like JC being out and other contextual points that need to be made when evaluating it. But the numbers are the numbers. And I would just say this when looking at Ejiro. I do think that this, in large part, is kind of a continuity play. Yes, because you have the same scheme, which is nice to be able to have guys just fit in this, continue to grow in this scheme, something that Dave Canales likes and Dan Morgan likes. And Dan Morgan's a defensive guy. They love the scheme. They like Ejiro. He's clearly doing something right in that building. And from what they're evaluating, he is hitting the marks to be able to keep his job, and not just keep it, but to be extended, to remain in this job potentially through the end of the 2027 season. So the next 2 years, potentially in Carolina, EJ will be coordinating this defense. So I look at it as kind of continuity play. And, you know, you talk about the personnel, Sam. I didn't think the personnel was great those first 2 years, to be honest with y'all. And that was kind of when I did last year around this time, the whole case for and against. One of the cases for was, well, they were banged up, one, and the talent level was really not that great. And in particular, the depth was terrible. Look at the interior defensive line. Once Derek Brown went down in 2024, it was A'Shawn Robinson, and that was basically it. This year, Derek played every game. A'Shawn played every game. Bobby Brown was out there a lot. Turk Wharton missed some time, but they had depth. They did not have that. Linebacker, the play has not been the best the last 2 years, but they lost Shaq after 4 games. They lost Josie Jewell for most of that season in the one lone year he was here in Carolina. And then they move on from Josie before the season because of the concussion he suffered last year, or late in 2024, rather. And Trevin Wallace dealt with injuries again this season. Rose Boom dealt with injuries. Like, they have just not been able to be healthy at linebacker. And that's been a piece of the Panthers defenses historically with Sam Mills, Dan Morgan, John Beeson, Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Shaq before the last 2 years that had been a stalwart, had led these defenses. They have not really had that. So I look at the linebacker talent. It's not really there. Safety talent, I think that it's also needs to be improved. It's not there yet. And in particular, the edge rushing talent. I went back and just looked at some of the things I'd said when looking at the state of the defense back in July. And my expectation was not for this to be a good edge rushing group. And I felt the same way the year prior. Now, does Ejiro's scheme, and this is something that Princely Mamiellen was kind of inferring, does the scheme allow guys to be plus pass rushers? Maybe not. Maybe that's part of why Lou didn't want to be here. I don't know. But what I do know is that the outside linebackers this season combined for an 11.5 sacks, which ain't great. Scorton had 5 of those, so that's a positive development. Princely had, I believe, 2.5. Won 3. Jones 1. Trevis Gibson 1 as well. The interior defensive line had 10. Derek Brown had 5. A'Shawn had a couple. Bobby had like a half. Okay, Turk had 2. That's good, especially from that unit and from DB. But I don't think that Derek Brown should be tied for the lead in sacks on this team. If he's getting 5, I think that's great, obviously, but he should not be tied for the lead. So I don't think they have the talent there. So, yeah, I do believe that with another draft, another free agency class, that this defense can get better and maybe be knocking on the door as a top 10 defense. But I also understand the concerns that a lot of you have about how much zone they play, which is the most in the NFL, which would then mean that they play the least amount of man coverage in the NFL, and how that's impacted them late in games, not just what we saw last Saturday in that loss against the Rams. Now, speaking of Ejiro, he is interviewing for jobs right now in the NFL. Could the Panthers actually be playing 4D chess and hoping that he gets another job to pick up a draft pick? Someone believes that may be the case. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Hey guys, the draft picks positions are set, and so many teams are looking for their franchise quarterback. Ever wish to become a pro quarterback, get drafted first overall by the Carolina Panthers? Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number 1 draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number 1 quarterback career mode game on the mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. Sign contracts, train and upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and evolve your teammates. Give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise through the ranks, become a pro football legend. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend, QB1, it's your legacy. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated number 1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. It saves time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. As I told y'all early in the week, eventually I'm going to do a little off-season preview, look back also in 2025 for each position group, much like we do in the summer months in June and in July, where I do my position group previews. We're doing a position group off-season preview that's coming up here, I think, at the end of this month, and then the bulk of February before we get to the Combine in Indianapolis yet again. I think it's kind of crazy that there's even thought of, oh, let's move it and make it a big fan event. Guys, like, what are we doing? So we'll do that. I don't want to spend a lot more time talking about Ejiro. I know there's going to be people who are upset. I think after this week, you probably move on. Unless he gets a new job, then we'll talk about a defensive coordinator search, which sure, we can do that if that happens. Lastly, or at least the last thing I'm going to say about this is a question that I have here from Ben saying, do you believe the Panthers extended Ejiro with the hope he would be a head coach mid-contract and the Panthers would acquire a third-round comp pick? I'm sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to say no. I'm not even going to pretend that they had that thought in their head, because who has that thought in their head that, hey, we're going to extend you? The DC coming off of the worst scoring defense in NFL history. And our hope is that after this 26 or 25 season, and possibly after this 26 season, you're going to get a head coaching job, and then we're going to get a comp pick in 2027. I don't think that was going through the minds of Dave Canales and Dan Morgan. Maybe it was. Maybe they're playing 4D chess, and I'm an idiot, which probably true the latter anyways, but maybe that's what's happening. I don't think so. I will say, though, at least as far as reporting, the Falcons and Steelers have both requested to interview Ejiro this cycle. There has been reports that the Raiders also have interest. I have a hard time believing that Brady is going after him and that Pittsburgh will land on him. Atlanta, they kind of just did the whole black DC thing, if I'm being completely honest here. So are they going to do it again? And it's not like, I mean, Ejiro's coming from the Rams like Raheem Morris was. So, yeah, I think they're probably going to go with basically what they had before and the young, bright OC like Arthur Smith. We'll see if it works out for them. But, yeah, they can hire Bill Belichick. That'd be great for your boy personally. I don't think Ejiro's getting any of these jobs, and he'll be back here in Carolina. Now, that's a big thing because a lot of y'all are interested in Maxx Crosby. Tavon saying to me, Maxx Crosby, is there any interest in the organization? Avery, would you give the Raiders, the Panthers, 19th overall pick in exchange for Maxx Crosby? Because I think I would do it in a heartbeat. What are your thoughts on a trade package for him? Jordan asking, it may be too early for draft / free agency / trade talk. It's never too early, Jordan, especially when it's no football is being played by the Panthers. Then knock yourself out. But if there continues to be tension in Vegas between the Raiders and Maxx Crosby, will the Panthers be a realistic landing spot? If they do get an upgrade at linebacker, Crosby may be the missing piece to help the defense take that next step into the top 10. He could very well be. So here's the thing. A big piece of Crosby, much like Trey Hendrickson, is scheme fit. Patrick Graham is the DC out there. At least he was. Maybe he's still under contract, but he has been the defensive coordinator out there in Las Vegas, coaching up Maxx Crosby. His base scheme has been a 3-4, but he has shifted that in recent years to more of a 4-man front. I read an article on The Athletic from Ted Wynn, who does a great job breaking down the X's and O's of football, puts all the images and all that for you. Go read his stuff if you are subscribed. But he did a breakdown just about how Graham in 2024 started shifting more to a 4-man front. Then looking at this past season in 2025, the Raiders played the second most snaps in a 4-3 defense, only behind the Lions this year. The Panthers, though, only played 70 snaps in a 4-3. That was the 20th most in the NFL. When looking just at the 3 years that Ejiro has been here, the Panthers have played the sixth fewest 4-3 snaps since he's been DC. And it was 70 last year. It's 98 total. So 28 in the first 2 seasons, and then more last year. And maybe that's because you brought in more guys, like Derek was around. You brought in Bobby. You brought in Turk. You already had Ashawn. Maybe that allowed them to play more 4-3 base than they ever had, even though it's still not a ton compared to the 500-plus snaps that the Raiders ran it with Maxx Crosby. So that would be one of the things where if Maxx Crosby is going to have to come here, if he's going to come here, they're going to have to fit him into the scheme properly. And I think you scheme around the talent that you have and not just play to your scheme. But very clearly, when the Panthers have made their selections over the last couple of years, knowing that Ejiro is going to run a 3-4, and also understand this, the owner is the one who wanted to go to this scheme back when Ron was here. He was like, hey, you know, in Pittsburgh, we ran a 3-4, and we're a championship organization. Maybe you guys in Carolina should get rid of this 4-3 thing and do a 3-4. And the defense was awful back in 2019. Even when they had Luke, they were terrible because it's hard in one offseason to completely change what you're doing up front. And you need different body types for a 4-3 compared to a 3-4 and all of that. So I think right now they're pretty stuck on 3-4. And they just drafted 2 guys in Princely and a Nick who they feel like fit the scheme. They signed Pat Jones, and we'll find out what happens with this contract this offseason. They signed Pat Jones to fit into that scheme. I think DJ Wonnum's likely on his way out. So they do need another one, as in another edge rusher to come in and play in this. Is Maxx Crosby a fit? Maybe, maybe not. That's the one thing I think you have to think about. Would I give it the 19th overall pick for Maxx Crosby? I would not. I think that they need to use that on a young, cost-controlled player, especially knowing where their cap situation is right now, which we're going to talk about momentarily, and just that you got 2 years of Bryce. I mean, you can fit in the big contract now. I just think that use that on a linebacker. That's my thought right now. Obviously, that could change. All right, let's take one more quick pause, and we'll come back and talk about Dave staying as play caller. Also, Icky in the offseason ahead at offensive line, and much more here on Locked On Panthers. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I actually pulled up the Game Time app, and I know Panthers aren't playing anymore, but if you happen to be in Seattle, buddy, are there some good deals for that Niners? So, well, no, it's not the Niners. Yeah, it is the Niners. That Niners-Seahawks game coming up on Saturday night. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. The divisional round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app each game day. You'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boost make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks and apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Okay, so Ejiro Evero is coming back. We're not talking about that anymore, but we are going to talk about Dave Canales maintaining control as play caller here in Carolina. Again, Twitter, now known as X, complete dog crap website now. And I was over there looking through my DMs, still at me, DM me over on X or over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in. But I was going over there today, and this thing, guys, tell me what your name is. If you have some random name in your profile, if you're anonymous on the internet, please, at least when you're sending it, it's like, hey, Julian, my name is Tyler. Here is my question. Do that, because this person did not get their name because the app is complete, again, dog doo-doo. But they said, I've noticed a lot of people discussing the possibility of finding an offensive coordinator to replace Dave as play caller. However, I have a concern about this. If this hypothetical OC is successful in calling plays and we end up in the playoffs again, it's almost certain that they'll become another team's head coach within 1 to 2 seasons. This could potentially hinder Bryce's development because there might be a lack of continuity between the offensive schemes. Wouldn't it be better for Bryce and the other young offensive talent at the play caller were also the head coach? After all, we brought Dave here because he was also one of these trending offensive gurus, which is a salient point to the person who they know who they are. I just don't know who they are, who asked me this question. All right. So yes, you're right. Dave got this job in large part because of what happened with Geno when he was quarterback coach a couple of years ago in Seattle, and what happened with Baker the one year he was an OC, and the only year prior to coming to Carolina he had been a play caller in the NFL. So you are absolutely right. And if they go out and get somebody else, I'm not necessarily looking for like this up-and-coming offensive guru, because I was certainly in the camp, and I am still in the camp, that Dave is never going to be Sean McVay. He's never going to be Kyle Shanahan. He's not even going to be a Kevin O'Connell. Ben Johnson as well. There's a lot. And these guys are in the NFC, by the way. So if you want to get to the Super Bowl, which is the whole point of doing all of this, those are the guys you have to overcome. Now, Dave's beat Sean McVay once this year, and the Panthers put up 31 points in that game. And then on Saturday, they put up 31 more points. So I guess Dave's doing a pretty good job, at least scheming against the Rams DC, but keeping up with Sean McVay offenses. There's at least that argument. Didn't do it against Kyle Shanahan. We'll see how he does against Kevin O'Connell as they play this upcoming season in 2026. I don't see it. I really don't. I think he could benefit, but he's also, as he mentioned, he's a young play caller, but he's gotten 3 years, and he's honestly gotten the last 2 years to do it because he's the head coach. And I think any other situation, he'd probably be getting fired. Let's be honest here. Josh Grisard got 1 year in Tampa. It did not go well. They fired him. Cohen went well, got a head coaching job. Dave went well, got a head coaching job. So that does speak to your point, though, that if they brought in one of these hypothetical OCs and they were successful, Panthers got back to the playoffs, that they could lose that guy. Now, the Panthers did just go to the playoffs, and their OC is getting no interviews. That's Brad Idzik, who a lot of y'all have said, let Brad call plays because that would make a material difference. I don't believe so. You do, but I don't know. We'll find out who's right, who's wrong if that ever comes to pass. Brad hasn't really called plays other than like a couple of preseason games this year and during training camp. So maybe that's why no one's interested, but we have seen guys like Matt Nagy, who doesn't call plays in Kansas City, get a job, suck at that job, and now appears to be the favorite to get the job in Tennessee. What are we doing, NFL? Eric Bieniemy wasn't calling plays, and he got plenty of interviews, never got a job. I don't even know where he's at now. Doug Peterson, same case, wasn't calling plays in Kansas City, but he got the job in Philadelphia. They won a Super Bowl, and then it didn't work out. Went to Jacksonville, worked out, then it didn't. So it's possible, I would say, for guys to, I was going to say it's not impossible, but it is possible for guys like Brad to get a job while not calling plays. I just think that's like one of the dumbest fears is like, oh my God, if we're successful, then we're going to lose our coaches. Like, yeah, there is a brain drain. And you look at Detroit as a very clear candidate of one of those teams where they lost Ben Johnson. They also lost Aaron Glenn. And of course, offensively, they took a big step back because you're not going to be as good offensively when you're replacing who may be the best play caller in the NFL in Ben Johnson, especially when he goes to your division rival. Had he gone to the AFC instead, not gone to Chicago, that changes things. Because maybe the Lions end up being a playoff team if the Bears aren't as good as they have been this season with Ben Johnson. Like, that is what really hurt them, I think, more so than Ben Johnson leaving. It's that he left to go in division and made it harder for them to win the division title again. And also just the natural regression of the NFL, not for long, that the Lions went from nearly playing for Super Bowl, looking like the best team until with all the injuries last year in 2024 to this past season where they went 9-8, but that was not enough in that division. So yeah, I see what you're saying. And I do think one big thing about it too is the continuity is a big thing. And that was what we were talking about with Ejiro. Bryce has been in this offense for 2 years. His first year as a rookie under Frank Reich, Thomas Brown, all of that was just messed up. So you kind of throw that away. Year one with Dave did not start well. It ended well. Last year was the first time in his career things have just been normal. It's been steady. And having him come back to a stable situation where he has the same play caller, it's the same scheme, I see a big benefit in that. I'm just kind of thinking long term, is that truly the best thing for this organization? And is Dave truly the right guy? I think not. I'm happy to be wrong, but we'll see how it plays out. All right, Andy now asking about Icky. Hey, Julian. Hey, Andy. How do injuries like Icky's affect the salary cap? Does he still count against cap, or are season-ending injuries not counted? And how will that affect how we fill in that spot next year? Yeah, he's still going to count against salary cap. Overthecap.com right now has Panthers with $11.1 million salary cap space. Not a lot. Icky, his cap charge is $17.5 million. That is also how much he's making off of his fifth-year option this coming season. Now, if the Panthers get a deal done, they could open up to $13 million in salary cap space. Now, they did not do that full amount last year with JC when they gave him what at the time was the highest contract ever given to a defensive back in history of this league. They did not use the full extension amount. Now, this is why Brant Tillis is here, to figure out the salary cap, figure out the contracts, make sure that Carolina can be able to maneuver this offseason to have enough space to do what they want to do. There's a lot that they want to do free agency-wise to improve this roster. So, yeah, Icky will count against salary cap, and that's his cap charge. And there's a possibility that they could open up $13 million more and already get $24 million salary cap space if they do give him an extension. Now, speaking of that extension, Mark asked, hey, JC, hey, Mark, is it too simplistic of me to say that the obvious move with Icky is just to pony up and give Brady Christensen a good contract? Let's be honest. We wanted to keep him around, but now he holds leverage. Give him a deal that works, draft an OT, offensive tackle day 2 or 3 to work behind Icky, Brady, and Taylor, and move on with that. I'm not a fan of sinking too much capital in an unknown asset left tackle right when it looks like we're opening their team's opening their Super Bowl window. Brady knows the scheme. Icky should hopefully see the field at some point next season. I think this works for all parties, and there isn't a need to tear up the whole offseason plan. Yeah, well, there's a need to adjust the offseason plan. I don't think anyone was saying they're going to tear it up. I still feel like giving Icky an extension makes a lot of sense for Carolina because, look, this is your franchise left tackle. And I also look at, like, Taylor. He'll be back. They already took care of him. That's very helpful when looking at the whole Icky situation. But they're going to have to bring in – they were going to have to bring in a swing tackle anyways because Josh Nijman, his contract's up, and it feels like they're going to move on from him. So they're just going to bring in somebody. And I think they need to find somebody who's better than Josh and really someone they can look at as a one-year starter and give that guy the understanding, like, hey, we're going to give you this money to come in and be a starter this season. But if and when Icky's ready, Icky's going to be our guy, and then you'll be a backup. Now, I think that guy's going to say to Carolina, okay, I'll do it. Here's my price. And he's going to think that guy just ruptures patellar tendon in January. He ain't going to be playing until maybe the second half of the season. And if things are going well, are they really going to remove me from my left tackle spot and put in Icky? Well, we'll see when that time comes. I would bet that they wouldn't if I was that prospective left tackle coming into this year. Now, your point, Mark, about drafting an offensive lineman would make some sense. I would think center would be the first area to look at draft-wise, but it would be smart, too, to go draft a backup tackle. They have not drafted an offensive lineman in these 2 years that Dan Morgan's been the general manager and president of football operations. And I think it would make sense to get an interior offensive lineman and also maybe an offensive tackle as well to develop, well, at least offensive tackle to develop, center to play possibly day one if there's someone that makes sense if they want to do that at 19. We can have that discussion later on this offseason. As far as Brady goes, he did tear his Achilles on October 25th. I did talk to Brady briefly on Sunday, and he said things are going well. He said it sounds like they want him back. Cool. But again, Icky's already injured. Brady's injured. do you want to be relying on two guys coming off of injuries? Because the last time they did that, Austin Corbett, Brady Christensen, things did not go well. So we'll see what they decide to do. Final question from another person named Mark. It is clear the easiest way to the playoffs is through winning division. Yes. Based off of what I see, the Saints still have a long ways to go to be out of cap hell, and Tampa, while small on dead money, have a decent amount of voidable contracts to get out of. The Falcons are actually in really good shape with no voidable contracts, and I see a play where they could get a Kyler Murray as an example, extend Bijan Robinson, and be viable couple with a good coach as they look solid. My question is this such a critical year for the Panthers, caps plus drab? How important is that to extend Brant? Okay, sure. Yeah, Brant Tillis probably sticking around, so not really too concerned about that. I had a conversation with somebody last week. Sounds like Ian Cunningham from the Bears is the favorite to get that job in Atlanta. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about Brant. As far as the rest of the division goes, the Saints, I mean, the biggest thing I think about what happened in NFC South second half of the season is that Tyler Shuck can play. And that's not good for everybody else involved. So they're going to be a problem, I think. And guys like Cameron Jordan, I don't know how much time he has, DeMario Davis, they still played to a standard defensively. And Chase Young played well. He'll be back. Look, New Orleans, we'll see what they do this offseason. That could be one of those teams where they're like a sneaky, because they ended up being the best team at the end of the year in the NFC South. They lost to Atlanta, so I guess maybe Atlanta winning 4 in a row under Kirk Cousins, but I don't know. New Orleans seemed to be the team that was trending in the best direction at the end of last season. So that would be concerning. I don't know if they're there yet. I'd have to really do a deeper dive into them. The Falcons, hell, they feel like they have a lot of good pieces, but they don't have a head coach right now, and they don't have a quarterback. And the quarterback that they may think they have was drafted by a regime that has been fired, and he tore his ACL like for the third time. So, yeah, not great. And in Tampa, they're keeping it all the same. Grizzard got fired. They're going to bring in another OC, and if that OC is a good one, like Cohen and like Dave was for them, then Tampa's like right back up there as like the chief competitor for Carolina in this division, and it makes things difficult. So they already showed a complete inability to beat the Saints last year. I don't think New Orleans is getting worse. And in Tampa, they won one of them and then lost the bigger one, I feel like, at the end of the season. Yeah, the path to the playoffs, still trying to win the division. I do think that the division will be a little bit harder coming up here in 2026, but we'll see how it all plays out. But that's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, inspires truly Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'm back with y'all on Monday as we'll look back at what I got right, what I got wrong in 2025, looking back at a buy or sell segment I did on TV, and also looking back at the state of the offense and say the defense that we did back in July. All that and more coming up here on Monday on Locked On Panthers.